Morning, folks. Welcome to Mark's Morning Business Check-In. Thanks for joining me again. Today is Wednesday. It's Wednesday, the 4th of March. And as I said, again, the weather, looking at the window here, the weather is fantastic. So it's a great morning here in Dublin. London, I would believe, looking at everything is still the same, and so is Paris. So all that is going, so the weather is fantastic. That's really good. So this is Mark's Morning Business Check-In, where every morning I talk about my experience in business for the last 30 years, and I tell you what has worked for me, and hopefully it'll work for you, and what hasn't worked for me, and mistakes I made, hopefully you don't make the same mistakes. Now, yesterday we talked about your day one plan when you take over a company. Your day one plan when you take over a company. And I just want to do part two of that now. And part two of that is, what are the things from my experience that people get wrong when they take over a company? What are the things that people don't do right and that cost them a lot of money? And consider that they've already spent 3 or 4 million, like we spent £5 million. So considering that they may have made mistakes and may have spent a lot of money in the company. And you imagine, because they spent a lot of money, they fully understand the company they bought. But that's not always the case. Because if they haven't been involved in that business before, if it's not a management buy-in but more of a takeover, then they won't be aware of certain things. So number one of the biggest mistakes I've seen when people take over a business is ignoring the culture that's in place. Ignoring the culture that's already there and operating. And you have to remember, if you've paid a substantial amount of money for this business, you've paid the money because, one, you've seen an opportunity of something that is working. And yes, you've seen an opportunity of things that you can change. And I always have 3 things I tell people when I'm helping people and advising people who are taking over a company or just taking over the company. What I always say to them is, number one, observe first. Observe the business, observe the people, observe. Number 2, understand the second. Understand how the whole operation works. And number 3, change is third. Before you don't make any changes, that's the third thing you do. So the first thing a lot of people do who buy businesses, they ignore the culture that's in place. They just ignore the culture that's in place, and they try and impose a new culture on the business. When we sold our company to Air many years ago, one of the things we worked very hard on was not letting the culture of a semi-state company, and Air was semi-state at one stage, and that company permeated through the whole business, not letting that culture infect our culture, to the extent that we insisted we stay in the building we were in as a separate company. So Indigo is kept as a separate company. Now, after about 8 months, they wanted to move us into a building with all the rest of Air IT people, which happened. And when that happened, it completely changed the culture. The entrepreneurial spirit, the entrepreneurial culture disappeared from the business. So don't ignore the culture in place. You've bought that company, you spent good money on it, whether it's 100 grand, whether it's 100, whether it's £1 million, whether it's £5 million or £10 million, you bought that company because you are aware that certain things that are happening there are working extremely well. Number 2, changing things too fast. I've seen too many instances of people buying companies or doing management buy-ins, and maybe they already work in the company, and they have this view that because they've just bought this company and spent money on it, that they must make changes fast. Because maybe they were the managing director, or maybe they were the financial director or the sales director, and they are leading the management buy-in team, and they believe the way to put their stamp on it is to make changes fast. And that is not the way to do things. You need to, even if you have been working in the business and you understand the business, in reality, you're going to see stuff that you didn't see before when you are suddenly the owner of the business. And you're going to look at it through a different lens. You're now looking at it through an entrepreneurial lens and as an ownership lens. So don't change things too fast. Number 3, losing key staff. I'm always amazed when someone takes over a business. And you have to remember, when you take over a business, the business you're taking over, the staff in that business are going to be worried. They're going to be worried about their jobs and their livelihood and what's going to happen to them. Because if they don't know you and they're only meeting you for the first time, well then that worry is going to get worse, because they may know about you from the industry. You may have a certain reputation. They may have a certain awareness of the business you are running. Maybe you were running a competing business and now you own this company. So you're no longer competing, you're now their boss. And maybe some of them had a certain view on how you operate within the industry. But employees will be very worried about their jobs. Even though in Ireland, when you take over the company, they have continuation of contract, but they still may be worried about where do they fit in the scenario. Maybe you already have an accounts department, and now the accounts department you're taking over are wondering, will they keep me on? Will I lose my job? And that's why it's very important that one of the first things you do on day one, and you should have done some of this in the due diligence, who are the key people? Who are the key employees that you must keep? One, you must keep them to retain your customer base and your key customers. Number two, you must keep them because to keep morale up, these people are looked up to within the organization. And three, you must keep them because they have a handle on the financial well-being of the company and where the company is now. And the relationship with suppliers may be such that they actually help influence the cash flow, because when people owe you money, these people will just lift up the phone and maybe ring the customers that they manage and get payment very quickly. So losing these key employees may have an effect on your cash flow, may have effect on your sales and on your revenue and on company morale going forward. So that's a key mistake, that when someone spends money, they don't look around and decide who are the key employees here. And sometimes the key employees are not the people at the very top. Maybe there's someone in middle management that knows exactly how the whole company operates, and he or she is the one that makes the phone call, not the credit controller, not the boss, to some key people in your supplier network and your customer network to chase up product, to chase up money, to chase up making sure service levels are high. Maybe he or she is a key employee. And that's why it's very important in the first initial few days to observe, look and see what's happening within the company. Because what you've seen on paper when you bought it and doing your due diligence and your financial due diligence and going through all the employee contracts doesn't give you the full picture if you've never worked in that business before. If you have, then you may be aware of it. But it doesn't give you the full picture if you haven't worked in that company before. And I cut my honey there. The next one is not communicating. And one of the big things when you take over a company, you need to tell employees why you've taken them over. You need to explain to them. So if you've taken them over to merge two businesses, to make them the two businesses together a stronger company, a better company, you need to tell them that. Because by communicating and giving them what your ideas are in the future and what your ideas will be in the future, you're helping them understand why you're there now, why you're doing what you're doing. So communicating is very, very important. Get your message out there. As I said before, maybe the only time a lot of these people have met you is seeing you at functions, maybe because you were a competitor, and maybe you've never been in this industry, this company's industry that you're just taking over. So why are you getting into it? What opportunities do you see? Explain to them. Communicate what is your reason for taking them over. Because most times your communications will help key staff understand why you're there. It will also help staff who are worried about their jobs understand why you're there. So communications is extremely important. And some people don't like communicating on the first day. They think they'll be giving too much away. They'll be telling the battle plan, how they're going to move forward and all that type of stuff. But look, you can still introduce yourself. Tell people what your background is. Explain them where you come from. Are you new to business? Are you new to entrepreneurship? Are you new to business ownership? Don't assume these people will look you up on Google and know who you are. Google is one-dimensional. You're three-dimensional or four-dimensional. So you need to get out there in front of people and explain to them who you are and what your experience and what your background is. And even simple other ways of communicating is walking around the company on day one and day two, going into different departments and introducing yourself and talking to staff, getting to know what staff are about, getting to know who's who, that type of stuff. But it's really getting out there and letting people know who you are and what you're all about. And that makes losing key staff and changing stuff down the road and managing the culture much more easy, because now you're out there and you're talking to the key people. Next thing that I see people too many make a mistake on is financial reality. They assume, see, when you buy a company, you're relying on the historical accounts of where the company has been, how well it's doing. You're looking at its balance sheet, you're looking at its P&L account, you're looking at its cash flow. But a lot of that stuff is historical. It's only when you get in there do you realize certain things may be different than what you believe. And one of the things I always find out when someone goes in, the first thing I always say to them is, how much money is in the bank? How much money are you owed by creditors as of this morning? Who are the biggest creditors that owe us money that are over the credit terms? Who do we owe money to? Are we behind in paying anybody? Have we extended our credit terms to anybody? Because you'll have seen a lot of this on a P&L account and a balance sheet. And in the balance sheet, they're all just figures. They're not broken down into individuals. And yes, you may have got a list last week before you bought the company of all the creditors and all the debtors, but that doesn't paint the actual picture. Because when you go in there, you might say, you might have decided, right, there's one or two creditors who owe you a lot of money. I want to chase them now. I want to bring that money in this week because I need that for the cash flow. But then when you talk to staff, you may find out, well, no, there's a problem there. We didn't fully deliver that service. Or we bill them, but we have to finish A, B, and C. Or maybe there's a dispute in some of the invoice. There may be reasons why they haven't paid that you were not made aware of. And then again, maybe the credit controller, talking to the credit controller to chase money, maybe not the right person. Maybe the person who manages those accounts is the person that puts the phone call in to bring in money. And that's why I talk about certain key people, maybe not just managing the customers, they maybe influence your cash flow. So that's what I mean by financial reality. Getting involved in what actually are you owed? Who owes you money? Why have they not paid? What's the delay? Who do you owe money to? Who have you not paid? What's the delay? So get a full picture, a real hands-on now picture of the financial reality of the company. And I remember when we took over the advertising agency, one thing I was aware of, because I had been a supplier to that company, was that the accounts department weren't really the ones that chased customers for money. It was actually the boss. He used to write funny notes to people if bills went overdue. But he was the one that made the phone calls. So I knew as part of my role of going in, I either had to do that role or get someone who was very good at credit control with a personality. Because this person who was the boss of the company had a personality, and a certain type of personality that allowed them to reach out to people who owed them money and they collect that money. So the financial reality of where things are is important, and you have to remember that the financial reality of where things are can seriously hamper the business going forward if you don't get it right. Right. Next one is ignoring customers. Ignoring customers. One of the big things I always find is that when people go and buy a company, losing key staff is a big thing, but also losing key customers is a big thing. There may be customers there that might decide, well, I don't really want to work with this new person. I was thinking of leaving anyway or going out to tender. And that happens in a lot of instances. And that happens to us, that customers, when you take over a business, they use it as an opportunity to go out to tender and maybe look for someone, a new supplier, or see, are you the cheapest, are you the best, are you the most efficient in supplying the service? And that's important to remember, right? So don't ignore the customers. Don't ignore them. It's very important to ignore them. And the other thing is, don't overestimate your knowledge. Just because you've spent 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9 million pounds buying a business, don't assume that you know everything. You know it all because you've just bought it. It's your money. You've got the bank loan, whatever. You've gone in, you've done the bank guarantees. You're putting your money on the line. So you know best because you're the boss now. And you spent all this money, so you know what you have to do. Don't. Always remember this one thing. You bought this company for a reason. You may have bought it, yes, that maybe it's going out of business and is doing things wrong, but you still bought it because you see a future in it. And you see a future in it maybe because of the customers it has, maybe key personnel, maybe it has a certain amount of turnover. You've seen a reason why you think you can put your stamp on it. So you have a reason for buying it. So there is some good there. And you need to manage that good, whether it's the culture, whether it's the customers, whether it's the staff, whether it's the suppliers, whether it's employees. You've seen a reason, some nuggets there that you want to exploit to make the company better. So manage it well and make sure, as I said, as part of your day one plan. And we'll go over tomorrow, we're going to talk about going into a 90-day plan. But as part of your 1 day plan, when you hit the ground on day one, don't ignore the culture. Don't ignore your key staff. Communicate. Get a handle on the financial reality of the company. Don't ignore your customers. They're all important. So they're all things that I've learned over the last number of years in buying and selling companies. So I hope they help you, whether you're spending 50 grand to buy a company, whether you're spending 100 grand, whether you're spending 100 million. It's all relative, and all the rules and all the suggestions are the same no matter what size company you have, right? And if you are buying a company and you want my advice and you want my support in how to put together a day one plan and to put together a 90-day plan to make the merger or the takeover go well, that's no problem. It'll cost you €4, as I said before, to reach out and meet me for a coffee. You're buying the coffee. That's why it's going to cost you €4. And over that coffee, if I can't help you, I can't help you. If I can, I'll tell you what I can do for you. It's as simple as that. So if you want to spend €4, fantastic. If you don't, hey, no problems. Okay, no problems whatsoever. So, and the same to people who are a lot of people who I work with in the States and elsewhere. If anybody there in the States or Finland or further afield want help, we can have a virtual coffee. Yes, we can have a virtual coffee, right? And we can see what can we do to help you. I've been doing this we're running companies for 30, 25 years. Some of them have been my own, some of them have been other people's. I've bought, I've sold companies. I've closed down, I've liquidated companies. I've had to close down businesses that weren't doing well. One business in particular, we got hit by a bad debt of over $500,000. So I've seen it from all angles. I understand it from all angles. Okay, that's important from your perspective, right? So if you need help, ask, right? If you don't ask, it could be the biggest costly mistake you've ever made. Even if it's not me, if you need help, ask. It costs nothing to ask somebody for help. Make sure you do that. So if you're struggling with your business, if you're struggling yourself mentally on how you're going to organize the way your business is going, as I said, €4, and we can have that coffee, and I can see can I help you. It's as simple as that. Thanks very much for your time this morning, folks. Really, really appreciate it. Hope you have a great day. As I said, it's Wednesday, so it's midweek. We're halfway through. We're on the hip. Now, and if you're self-employed, you're probably getting ready now to go out and knock on doors and collect money to pay staff for the weekend. So next few days are tough days for you. I feel for you. I understand how that is. So have a great day. For the people on YouTube, thanks so much for listening this morning on the podcast. And don't forget, all our podcasts from the 6th of January, from all the shows we've done. We've got 30 odd shows up there already, covering all type of topics. They're all on our YouTube channel at Mind's Eye Education. Have a great day. Take care of yourself, folks. We're ending our